Shalom lekulam and welcome back to Che Languages. My name is Yair and today we're going to be revisiting a topic which I spoke about around 2 years ago. You may remember my video on 3 revived languages which had this diabolical thumbnail. Seriously, when I made it, I thought I'd made the most fire thumbnail ever. I was so proud of this level of editing and even got my girlfriend to add this grain effects to make it have an old aesthetic and improve the overall graphic design. However, not only have my videos improved in quality since then, but so has my passion for language revival, as I truly believe that the key to reclaiming one's culture is to first and foremost reclaim one's language, and I salute all indigenous communities who are currently doing so. We'll be taking about 3 more such communities into consideration in this video, and the languages they were able to bring back from extinction. I will make it clear now, however, that part 3 is highly unlikely anytime soon, as there are not many languages in the world that have been revived, and the ones that I will be talking about today are already pushing the boundaries. However, without wasting any more time, let's get straight into the video. Yalla, let's begin. In my original video on 3 revived languages, I talked about Massachusetts, to be specific, the Wampanoag dialect, which is the focus of their revival movement. Wampanoag is an Algonquian language that has been revived in Massachusetts, and I noted in that original video that one other Algonquian language has also been revived. Well, this language is none other than the first language we're going to discuss today, which has several names but is mostly referred to as Miami. It was not until researching this video that I learned that Miami can refer to a Native American nation in Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, and it is because of the Miami Illinois tribe, the traditional speakers of Miami, and the academic name for the language. The Miami, in this instance, is completely unrelated to the Miami in Florida, and in both the respective indigenous languages they come from, the name is pronounced differently. It's important to note some sources, including Wikipedia, use the name Iranwi. However, this appears to be an outdated term, and the official revival movement uses Miami as the exonym. That brings us to the main endonym used for the language, Mayamia. As already mentioned, Miami is an Algonquian language, and it traditionally existed across the states I already mentioned. However, due to sad historical reasons, a large part of the Miami nation now live in Oklahoma, where they're officially recognized as a nation, and where this flag in the corner comes from. Miami was first documented by French Catholic missionaries in the 17th century. However, contact with Europeans brought disease and later, in the American period, war, famine, and exile. The people and the language experienced a gradual decline, as did many Native American tribes, until the language was already critically endangered by the 1930s. Efforts were made to record the language before it disappeared, and thankfully, this is why so much is known about the language. By the early 1960s, it is thought that the language went extinct after the last speakers died. However, similar to Zuckerman's approach, the revival movement does not believe that a language goes extinct, but rather that it is merely sleeping. It is currently being woken up at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. The main professor who has been driving the movement is Miami linguist Darrell Baldwin, who taught himself Miami from the recorded documents beginning in the early 1990s, and has since raised his 4 children as the language's first native speakers. Overall, there are now around 500 active speakers of the language, and the course in Miami University is thriving very well. Despite all these efforts and accomplishments, UNESCO still registers Miami as extinct, which is interesting because they listed Livonian as being revived just in 2022, having only 1 native speaker. Anyway, let's have a look at the language. First of all, we have the consonant inventory for Miami, which is surprisingly small but reminds me of other Algonquin languages I've looked at before. Shown here is the orthography for the language, and we can see there are also 4 vowels, and they all have short and long distinctions. Here is also a table showing personal pronouns in Miami, and for all the people who like grammar, for some reason, here is a table showing their cases. I always find languages interesting that have a distinction between animate and inanimate nouns, and if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. Finally, let's move on to a sample of Miami. Omniglot were kind enough to provide this text, which appears to have been from a website for the movement that originally existed, but is now defunct. We'll also be linking a video of Darrell Baldwin and a student having a natural conversation with one another in Miami, as it's really amazing to hear this language being spoken. It really warms my heart to see projects like this succeed, and I wish the Miami Nation all the best in their awakening of their language once again. For now, however, let us move on to our next language. I will admit I was wary about adding this next language into the video, but I've decided it still deserves the attention. This language is Palawakani, an Aboriginal language in Tasmania, Australia. The reason I was apprehensive to talk about this language in a video of revived languages is because Palawakani is a conlang. Wait, let me explain. The language was constructed, or perhaps reconstructed, from vocabulary that was recorded in the original Tasmanian languages. However, there's a problem. If you look at this map, you can see there were lots of indigenous Tasmanian languages. It's not agreed how many there were. It could have been as many as 16, and furthermore, they are all unclassified, meaning that they might not even be related to each other. It's proposed by some that there could have been as many as 4 different language families on the island. To make matters worse, the Tasmanian languages were very poorly recorded. Nonetheless, Palawakani was created in 1992, almost 100 years after the death of the last speaker of any Tasmanian language. At the moment, it's believed to have around 400 users, and it's not thought any are native as the language is not fully developed yet, still being in progress. However, it's annoyingly difficult to find anything out about Palawakani because it is copyrighted by the Tasmanian Aboriginal Centre, which brings into question whether one can own a language. In fact, the Tasmanian Aboriginal Centre filed a lawsuit against Wikipedia back in 2012 over the rights of the language. The TAC gatekeeps the language and is also known for preventing white people from learning the language unless they make a formal application and show genuine interest. This made me even more apprehensive to include Palawakani into this video, but I am only using the information that Wikipedia provides. I also want to note that the TAC rejects that Palawakani is a conlang. They truly believe it is an accurate revival of a Proto-Tasmanian language. Here is a list of the consonants, and it also shows an insight into the orthography, which chooses only to use lowercase letters. But I'm not a barbarian, so I've capitalized it in the title at the top. However, in the subtitles, it appears in lowercase. Not much of the grammar was ever recorded, so constructing it has been difficult for the movement, but I did find reference to the language using verb, subject, object, word order. Moving on to the samples, I have a list of numbers, and secondly, the main sample text provided on Wikipedia, which is an eulogy for the victims of the Risdon Cove massacre in 1804. Due to copyright, I am wary of including anything else, but I will try and link some more about the language into the description. However, let's move on to our last language. Before we move to our last language, I think we should mention some honourable mentions. Kaurna was spoken in southern Australia and died in 1929. The revival began in the 1980s. Kaurna is a Pama-Nyungan language. The number of speakers today is unclear, but it's been growing in popularity at the University of Adelaide and is seeing popularity online. Here is a sample text with a translation below. Staying in southern Australia, there's also another language by the name of Diari. It was thought to be dead after 1914, but an elderly native speaker was found in the 1970s and linguists began to study his speech. After his death, the research continued, and in 2008, a revival began. Once again, Diari is a Pama-Nyungan language, but from a different branch. I can't find much on Diari, which is odd considering it claims to have 34 native speakers, but I don't consider this very reliable. There is a blog and a podcast in the language, and several dictionaries have been produced too. I will link any further information in the bio. Moving over to California, we have Chochenyo and Mutsun, which are two related Ohlone languages, part of the greater Yokutian language family. A map of the languages is shown here, centering around the San Francisco Bay. Both languages went extinct in the 1930s, and both languages' revival began in the early 2000s. It is unclear how many speakers either language has today. I could not find any written samples, so I will attach anything else I can find in the description. Now for our final language. Our last language takes us to Russia, where in the Far East, a language known as Soyot was once spoken. It existed in the Okinsky district of Buryatia, and a small part of Mongolia, where the Soyot people reside. Here is a map of the Okinsky district in Buryatia, with the Soyot population in blue, and here is a map of Buryatia as a whole. This map of Okinska is actually rotated by 90 degrees, and this is where it is within Buryatia, on the border with Mongolia. I used the flag of the Okinsky district for the flag of the Soyot language, but I also wanted to just point out the beautiful flag of Buryatia, which is one of my favorite regional Russian flags, and you can see the Mongolian influence on it. The language itself is called Soyotil, and if you can't already tell from the name, it belongs to the Turkic languages, specifically the Siberian Turkic languages. In terms of relation, it's actually very close to Tuvan, although I'm not sure what the level of mutual intelligibility is between them. Tufa and Durkhan are actually a lot closer. Soyot is sometimes referred to as Soyot Tsatan. The Tsatan part refers to Durkhan, but they are now considered to be different languages. For reference, Durkhan is the language on the other side of the border in Mongolia. Officially, the Soyot people were historically considered Buryat until 2003, despite Soyot being Turkic and Buryat being Mongolic. Midway through the 20th century, however, Soyot died out as a spoken language. Thanks to the effort of Russian linguist Valentin Rasadin, dictionaries have been published, which will be linked in the description, but it's helpful if you know Russian. Soyot is also now taught in primary schools in the Okinsky district. Overall, it's not clear how many speakers the language has in total, but education in the language seems to be successful so far. Moving on, let's have a look at Soyot's phonology. If you were to just show me these vowels, I would instantly recognize this language as being Turkic, and the consonants further seem to be very typical of Turkic languages. To me, it's amazing how uniform the phonology of Turkic languages are across the world. Rasadin developed a Cyrillic alphabet for Soyot when writing his dictionaries, which is shown here. And for the grammarians, here is a table of Soyot's case system. I assume Soyot is agglutinative, like most other Turkic languages. Finally, let's take a look at some samples of Soyot. First, we have a list of numbers, and I'm simply amazed at how unchanged some of these are. The word for 5 is identical to the word in Turkish, and the others are very similar. Secondly, we have a full text, which I found on Omniglot with a translation below. If you speak any Turkic language, especially one that uses Cyrillic, let me know how much you understood. However, for now, that's everything we have for Soyot, so we're going to conclude this video now. Thank you all for watching this video. Before I go, I want to make a couple more announcements. Those are 2 new places where you can find me. The first one being TikTok, which, as much as I didn't want to, I decided to open one up for the short form videos. I'll be posting them on YouTube Shorts, TikTok and Instagram. And the second one is I've created a subreddit, Che Languages YT. There is an r/Che Languages as well, and that is not mine. So I decided to make an r/Che Languages YT for YouTube, as if you can't tell. That is run by me. I'm not sure what sort of stuff we're going to put on there yet, but maybe we can develop a subreddit. But that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.